What's up, everybody? Welcome back. We're here with some more NFL DFS picks and lineup advice for tonight's single game showdown slate on DraftKings and FanDuel. Thursday Night Football, Week 3, New England Patriots and the New York Jets. Welcome. I'm Brian Jester, co-founder here at Occupy Fantasy. In this video, we will discuss the injuries that impact tonight's slate, talk about some low-risk lineup construction tips, and give you picks, ideas, and strategies for the largest high-risk contests on both DraftKings and FanDuel. Let's not waste any time. Let's jump into it. Injuries for tonight's game, Patriots and the Jets. By the way, we've been spoiled at the start of the season with some of these primetime showdown slates. We had Chiefs and Ravens. We had the exciting Falcons and Eagles game. We had Lions and Rams. No, this is what we're built for. Jets, Patriots. This is the Thursday night showdown that we live for. Sloppy, ugly, likely low scoring, probably bad football. This is what it's all about. So, Patriots dealing with some offensive line issues. Already one of the worst blocking units in the league. Their top guard, City So, remains out. He has not played so far this year. They're also missing Vidarian Lowe, their left tackle. They'll have another left tackle starting tonight. Not great news for the Patriots offense. They'll also be without inside linebacker Juwan Bentley. That will provide a boost to the Jets running backs and tight ends. On the Jets side, and maybe this cancels out a bit of New England's offensive line issues, but the Jets are going to be without one of their top pass rushers, Jermaine Johnson. He's suffered likely a season-ending injury in Week 2. But they also could be without their signal caller, their middle linebacker, C.J. Mosley, dealing with a toe issue, did not practice all week. And reading between the lines, he didn't sound great about suiting up. It is a pain tolerance and swelling issue. Really unique injury to his toe. We'll see if he plays. If he's out, it certainly bumps up the Patriots tight ends and running backs, which is exactly the positions that they want to bump up based on their game plans through 2 weeks. So we'll monitor CJ Mosley's availability later today, but no offensive injuries or issues to deal with as far as positional players go. So we can easily project, based on 2 games, how we expect the roles to shake out tonight, and we will discuss that as we move along through the show. Now, let's talk about low-risk lineups, 50-50s, double-ups, head-to-heads. Just have to beat half the field to double your money. A lot of you ask for core plays. Many of the players that are mentioned in this section are the core plays. You want 3, 4, 5 of these guys in most of your lineups, regardless of contest type. You want all of them in your low-risk lineups. So if you know our strategies here at Occupy Fantasy for low risk contests, we try to lock up all the scoring, both quarterbacks and both running backs. If we try to do that tonight, Breece Hall will be the most popular captain and MVP on both sites, and rightfully so. Ramondre Stevenson, lead back for the Patriots. Aaron Rodgers, Jacoby Brissett. Now, you could technically do this and punt the final 2 spots. Jeremy Ruckert, who we talked about in Week 1, in that showdown slate, the tight end 2, had 3 targets last week, is running routes, just $800, didn't catch any, but he's out there on the field. You could do that. But that really doesn't give you much else. You could punt the other position with a player who's likely, if not almost guaranteed to score 0. Probably not the way you want to go. You could swap out Breece Hall and go with Aaron Rodgers at captain, save a little bit of salary since Breece Hall is so expensive at the captain spot. And then that gives you $1,400 per player. You could go Ruckert and Tyquan Thornton, who is one of the top 4 receivers for the Patriots. That still doesn't feel that great. Given the Patriots' game plan, given their offensive line issues, given Brissett's, whether it's lack of ability or lack of desire to throw the ball downfield, I think the best way to do it is just to leave out Brissett of your low-risk lineups tonight. So you go Breece Hall at the captain spot, Ramondre Stevenson, Aaron Rodgers. Now you have 36-30 per player, and you can play a bunch of guys here that are actually going to see playing time. Tyler Conklin, tight end 1. Let's just hit him in there. You could play Antonio Gibson, the running back 2. You could play Jalen Polk, one of the top receivers, Demario Douglas, defensive kickers. I think this is probably the way to go in low risk on DraftKings. So you play 3 of the 4 core players, the quarterbacks and the running backs, and go this way. Now on FanDuel, we have a similar dilemma. Let's go over there. If we tried to play all 4, we certainly cannot. $2,500 left per player. Here, the same thing. You just fade Jacoby Brissett. $12,500 is extremely cheap for a quarterback, but again, how many points is he realistically going to score against this defense without 2 of his top offensive linemen? $7,500 per player, and now you can mix in any of these guys down here, whether it's 2 Patriots receivers like Osborne, Douglas, Thornton, Polk, and Thornton. You could go down to Ruckert. Different ways to go here, but I think these are 3 guys you want to play in your low-risk contest on FanDuel. Not a great strategy as far as getting in the core players goes, but it's the best we can do tonight on FanDuel. So that is the approach that I would give. Now, if we transition to high-risk contests, leagues, GPPs, satellites, have to be more than half the field. exponential payouts. You risk a little to win a lot. And it all depends on the size of the contest. Small field GPPs all the way up to the largest 150 max GPPs on both sites. And the size of the contest will determine how many uniqueness aspects you have to have. And I'll discuss some uniqueness aspects here over the next couple of minutes. And how big the contest is will determine if you need more of those, or if it's smaller, you'll need less of those to be different enough to take down the top prizes in those respective contests. Let's go back to DraftKings and we'll get a water sip in between to hydrate. All right, let's talk about some strategies here. And if we think about the very first and foremost strategy when it comes to high risk contests for uniqueness and differentiation are playing low owned players. If we look at the captain spot, Breece Hall, Garrett Wilson, Ramondre Stevenson going to take up a ton of the captain ownership on DraftKings. On FanDuel, we're going to see probably 90% of the MVP in Breece Hall and Stevenson and Aaron Rodgers. And probably rightfully so in a game that's going to be low scoring with not many other players. But as we get to the largest contest here in a second, I'll talk about a way to get different if you play those guys or if you don't play those guys. So in small field GPPs, you just play one of those guys on either site: Hall, Stevenson, Wilson, Rodgers. And there's enough lower owned plays to get different. Speaking of guys who we expect to be less than 20% owned on both sites, and actually probably the Patriots kicker in a lower scoring game. Patriots kicker Joey Sly should be right around 20%, if not lower. We like that. Depending on the contest, if you're in a really sharp high dollar contest, there's a chance Jacoby Brissett goes under 20% owned. We saw this with Kirk Cousins in the Monday night matchup against the Eagles. So $9,000 quarterback at sub 20% is always going to be in play. So consider that if you're in a really high dollar contest. Next, we have the Patriots defense. They are $4,400, relatively expensive compared to most defenses we see. The Jets defense, $5,400. They'll be above 20%, despite the elevated price tag with the Patriots defense, with the Patriots offense here. There's a good chance that the Jets defense gets over 20% owned. All right, next we have Braylon Allen, who $5,200. The running back two. Rarely do you see a true running back two. Granted, he scored twice last week, and that elevated his price tag. He shouldn't be more than 20%, and that's rightfully so. As a backup running back who's going to split some work with Breece Hall, he shouldn't get enough work to justify his $5,200 price tag. Next, we have Demario Douglas, $4,200. Tyquan Thornton, $1,600. We have KJ Osborne, $3,200. All of these will be sub 20%. Jalen Polk's the only receiver we expect to be above 20%. He scored the touchdown last week. Now, these receivers on New England combined for 5 targets in week 2. They were not happy about it. At least Demario Douglas was not. They all ran between 19 and 23 routes. You go back to week 1, that was between 14 and 21 routes. So these guys are rotating pretty good, and they're all seeing opportunity as far as routes run go, but not necessarily seeing the targets. Now, speaking of Demario Douglas, he was very visibly upset after Sunday's game, declined to talk to the media. Then finally on Monday did talk to the media. He was like, yo, I'm getting open. Look at the tape. I'm out there running routes. I implicitly said I'm out. I led the team in receiving last year. I know things will work out, but I'm open. Give me the ball, basically. Jacoby Brissett, quarterback, responded to that. Said, yeah, I see that. Things will play out how it will. Basically, this is a squeaky wheel situation. Demario Douglas, I think there's a good chance. There's an extremely good chance he scores more than his 0 points he scored last week. But really like him. Undervalued, under-owned, in a spot where they should try to get him the ball a little more. And they do look at the tape, and he is, in fact, open. I'm sure the coaches will recognize that as well. So Demario Douglas, really like him as the best play of the group. But Tyquan Thornton, if he's going to run 18 routes, 20 routes, and he's $1,600, he's extremely interested as well. Just needs one catch, basically, to pay off his price tag. So all the Patriots receivers not named Polk are interesting leverage options tonight. Austin Hooper, probably a large field play only, going to run 10-plus routes. Not super exciting. Hunter Henry is expected to be under 20% owned despite his massive performance last week. 21 fantasy points, 12 targets, insane. And maybe casual players will look at the box score and he'll get a little bit higher owned. But I think in sharper contests, he doesn't project that well at $7,800. There's a chance in higher dollar, smaller contests, he's under 20%. So I'm not one to chase box scores, but I will chase a box score if the player is low owned. And I think we can do that with Hunter Henry, and the underlying factors behind it make sense. Brissett trusts him. He doesn't trust the receivers. The offense is flowing through the running backs and tight ends. I don't think he'll score 21 points again, but he could score 10 points in a lower scoring game and certainly be in the optimal or winning lineup. And finally, we have Mike Williams, who's probably the most interesting lower owned player of the group. $6,200. We look at his game log last week, just scored 2 points, just scored 0 points against San Francisco in week 1. And if you remember back to the Monday video or the Monday daily plug in week 1 when they played the 49ers, we talked about him being on a snap count. He would likely just rotate in. As a result, Xavier Gipson was the one who was mostly being seen in 3 wide receiver sets with Garrett Wilson and Allen Lazard. That flipped last week. Xavier Gipson, their slot receiver, only ran 4 routes. Mike Williams doubled him up. Mike Williams ran 25 routes in week 2 after running just 6 routes in week 1. They moved Lazard to the slot a little bit. They moved Garrett Wilson to the slot. So with Mike Williams finally healthy, it looks like the top 3 guys are Wilson, Lazard, and Mike Williams. Now, he didn't score any points last week, or he scored 2 points last week on 1 target. But if you're going to have a formerly proven player who has been productive in the past, has deep ball potential, has touchdown potential, and he's going to be less than 20% owned, maybe even less than 10% owned based on his production so far, and he's going to run 25-plus routes with the better quarterback in this game, Mike Williams by far the best leverage play on the slate now that he's not a full-time role, but he's pretty close to it, especially in a single-game environment. So Mike Williams really like playing him in high-risk contests tonight. All right, what else can we talk about? Let's talk about some of the punt plays, sub maybe $3,600. We have Gibson. We talked about the receivers and tight ends. Conklin still operating as a tight end 1. Ruckert, 3 targets last week. Malachi Corley may see a route or 2, maybe a designed handoff, and that could be enough. I doubt they get him much more involved on a short week. Anybody else? No. All the $400 and $200 players are basically not playing in this game. They're running back 3s, wide receiver 5s. Really, if you're playing 150 max, you can mix these guys into a couple percent of your lineups, hope that there's some chaos and they get into the game. But in terms of any other contest type, none of these guys are really going to score any points. So it's an interesting slate where we're not really digging that deep. And we have a handful of viable options, all project relatively similarly between $800 and probably $3,200. There is an interesting pricing dynamic on FanDuel as well. Let's go over to FanDuel. And if we look at the pricing, we have Antonio Gibson, the number 2 running back on the Patriots, is $11,500. You'll never see that. Maybe you will because you look right down and Braylon Allen, the number 2 running back on the Jets, is $10,000. These guys project for like 6 to 8 touches, maybe 10 touches in the case of Antonio Gibson, and they're $10,000 or more on FanDuel. Like they're going to be low owned as a result. Hunter Henry, $11,000, going to be lower owned on FanDuel too. You have all the receivers, Lazard, Williams, every single Patriots receiver under $10,000. The kickers, defenses. No one's going to want to pay up for Henry, Allen, or Gibson when you could just get an extra stud and punt the final position with a realistic player who's going to get on the field. So while from a pure projection standpoint, it is not a good play to play Gibson, Henry, or Allen on FanDuel. However, in high-risk contests, especially in a game that's lower scoring, if they score a touchdown or get 70, 80 yards, they could be optimal and get a weirder, balanced lineup in there. So despite their lower ownership, despite their poor projections, they're actually great high-risk plays, even in the case of Allen and Gibson, who have reduced roles compared to your typical 10,000-plus player on FanDuel. So depending on the lineup you're building, if you don't trust the Patriots receivers, or you're just looking for an easy leverage spot, these 3 guys in this range, Allen, Henry, and Gibson, are great high-risk plays on FanDuel. Finally, let's talk about captain and MVP ownership. I touched on it briefly a little bit ago, but I think there are enough low-owned plays that Breece Hall, Stevenson, Aaron Rodgers, if you just play those guys at MVP on FanDuel, especially in the larger contests, you can get away with it because we have all those guys we talked about earlier, the Patriots receivers, some of the kickers and defenses will be popular, but some of these other guys down here, you can play 2 low-owned guys. Or I was talking to Jack this morning, who will be on the Monday night video. Remember, Jack won the 45K, what was it, last week? In Showdown, crushes FanDuel single game. He said he's a really good slate for 0 quarterbacks. And the quarterbacks will be high-owned despite the game environment. And playing 0 quarterback is a viable option and a uniqueness aspect here. And on that note, if we expect this game to be lower scoring, that is a great way to get different on both FanDuel and DraftKings, playing a defense, playing a kicker, playing 0 quarterbacks, and playing for a lower scoring game script. When games are lower scoring and a defense is included or 0 quarterbacks are included, you can leave more salary on the table. In fact, it is more optimal to do so. So leaving salary, a great way to get different as well, especially in larger contests tonight. And on DraftKings, I think there are certainly enough ways to get different if you play the popular Breece Hall, Ramondre Stevenson, Garrett Wilson route. But Hunter Henry 1%, Mike Williams 1%, the defenses sub 5%. it's tempting in larger contests, and I think you have to if you're building 20 plus lineups to include those guys that are sub 5% at captain into your high risk player pool on both sides, especially on DraftKings though. All right, I think that'll do it. Quick recap: Patriots receivers are leveraged. We really like Demario Douglas. Lower scoring game is certainly in play here with kickers and defenses. Zero quarterback is certainly an option, and you can leave a lot of salary on the table in high risk contests as well. That'll do it for this video. Again, if you like what you saw, make sure you are subscribed to the channel. Still, somehow, less than 50% of our Showdown viewers are subscribed to the channel. Let's rectify that. It's mutually beneficial. It's a free way to support the channel. You just click subscribe. You don't have to do anything else. But if you are on YouTube all the time or you like the videos, you want to get notified when we go live or upload the Showdown videos or the main slate videos, then being subscribed, if you're on YouTube, it'll pop up in your recommended feed. If you're not on YouTube all the time, click the bell notification. That way you'll get a pop-up notification on your phone when we post a video. The best way to get notified when we do any content here on YouTube. And again, it helps us out. We're so close to 10,000 subscribers. We're racing there, and we will do a giveaway for that. So make sure you're subscribed for that. Give us a thumbs up. Let's get to 500 thumbs up. I think we can do that on this video. Just an arbitrary goal, but you would be surprised at how much that helps us and the algorithm get more views, help out more people. And if you want extra info, you want to get the extra edge, you want to know everything about this slate, read our daily plug at occupyfantasy.com. It's linked in the description below. And our Occupy model has projections for every player on the slate, as well as our projected ownership. Our lineup builder that I talk about all the time on the channel, I'm going to use it again tonight, as I always do for Showdown. Build up to 300 lineups using optimal lineup criteria. Even if I'm building just one lineup, I use the builder because I can put it on the rules and get the optimal lineup for the contest I'm playing. All right, I think that'll do it. Thanks for watching. Any questions, comment on the video below. Love to see the conversations in the comments, or Discord. occupyfantasy.com/Discord is where you can chat with us and sweat out the games with other members of the community. So Brian Jester for Occupy Fantasy, thank you for listening, and good luck in tonight's Patriots and Jets Showdown slate.